Nelson Alexander Flores, better known by his street name Mula, was born in 1971 into Civil War-plagued and ravaged El Salvador. At the age of just 16 years old, he moved to Reno, Nevada to join the infamous MS-13. Founded in the 80s in Los Angeles, the gang attracted refugees and their children looking to escape the plight of their war-torn countries. By the early 90s, more than 12,000 were extradited for the U.S., which started the globalization and absolute rise to dominance, influence, and power of MS-13 that the world recognizes today. It's one of the deadliest groups in the criminal underworld, with some 70,000 members spanning across the Americas who all share the same mission: kill and control. Flores quickly began forging a reputation for violence before joining the Parkview Locos clique of MS-13 in Los Angeles during the 1990s. He snuck his way back into the U.S. through the Mexican border city of Tijuana and lived under the pseudonym Tony Pacheco. The most interesting part about Nelson Alexander Flores, or Mula, is that he became the bridge between MS-13 and La M. The many pictures I will put up in this video will show Mula alongside some of the most infamous and most powerful Mexican Mafia members to date. His story is truly unique and sheds light on the growing power struggle between the two gangs.
Ralph Rocha was a member of the Mexican Mafia for 2 decades before he secretly became an informant for a task force of ATF agents and Los Angeles County Sheriff's detectives. He infiltrated negotiations between these two groups, the Mexican Mafia and a Mexican drug cartel called La Familia. Both groups had something that the other wanted. La Familia wanted the Mexican Mafia to protect their leaders in U.S. prisons, and the Mexican Mafia wanted the methamphetamine that La Familia was producing by the ton at a cost low enough where they could corner Southern California's drug market. Rocha made a lot of audio tapes at the behest of his handlers, and he would make his own tapes that his handlers had no idea he was creating.
We got these Familia dudes. You know, they want to start supplying us. They said they'll give us $500,000 to start up. Any and all drugs we need, guns, weapons, whatever we need in the criminal world.
Rocha says in his tapes, and what I think is borne out by a lot of the evidence in this case, is that the Mexican Mafia is disorganized. They are constantly fighting each other.
So now you got the kings creating divide among kings. And then it's just everybody, it's just chaos.
Really kind of pulls back the curtain onto not just the world of the Mexican Mafia, but the mind of somebody who's going through this strange phase in his life where he's going from a gangster who takes pride in, you know, never working with the authorities and being his own man and handling his own business, to having to really work at the beck and call of these government officials that he's been trained his whole life to despise. And you can kind of hear some of the tension in his tapes.
I'm in this, I'm doing it, I might as well do it the best I can.
It really does have a cinematic arc, and he ends up in the same place that Henry Hill ends up in at the end of Goodfellas, which is in the witness protection program, living among, you know, ordinary Americans who have no idea about the things, you know, that he has in his past, because clearly he's not living under the name Ralph Rocha anymore.
Los Angeles police say they arrested 3 members of MS-13 in early morning raids this week at 10 locations throughout the San Fernando Valley. They are accused of shooting and killing a homeless man while he slept at a rec center in North Hollywood. Officers say MS-13 members are also believed to be responsible for at least 5 violent assaults at the rec center just after the shooting. Weapons, ammunition, and gang paraphernalia were seized during the raids. Curtis Silva for CBS.
And a major gang bust in Los Angeles today. Hundreds of law enforcement officers targeted suspected gang members. Investigators believe they've been operating in the Ramona Gardens area and have ties to the Mexican Mafia. KCAL9's Cara Finstrom has details now on today's indictment.
Once those arrest warrants were served, the suspected gang members were brought here to a command post downtown. We were here when one of the suspects with health problems was taken by ambulance to the hospital. No other problems were immediately reported during the searches and arrests made this morning. We saw a number of men and women brought in handcuffs and escorted into a holding area. FBI officials tell us all this stems from an extensive investigation that began in 2010. They say about 800 law enforcement personnel from a long list of agencies were involved, including the LAPD, Sheriff's Office, ATF, FBI, IRS, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. That office says that a federal racketeering indictment has been obtained against the gang and that it alleges various violations, including drug trafficking and murder.
We're targeting the worst offenders, the most violent offenders, and they do have direct ties to the Mexican Mafia. We're talking about distribution of narcotics, we're talking about robberies, we're talking about a number of different things to be named in the indictments. It is a long-term investigation, and it's a violent gang, and we think we really made an impact today.
Officials say a total of 38 people were charged in the indictment. 29 of them were arrested this morning. The others were either already in custody or are outstanding. Reporting here from downtown Los Angeles, Cara Finstrom, KCAL 9.
One of the most ruthless gangs in the world. Now accused members of that gang have been taken down, charged with trafficking, methamphetamine, and illegal ammunition. Earlier this morning, agents seized those drugs, including fentanyl and cocaine, 9 firearms, and nearly $100,000 cash. A total of 23 people are now in custody. 17 of them are accused members of the notorious and violent gang MS-13. The rest are believed to be associates of the gang.
This drug trafficking conspiracy was very well organized. An imprisoned MS-13 leader, who is also a member of the Mexican Mafia, directed the heads of the gang's various cliques, people also known as shot callers, to purchase methamphetamine and distribute it in their neighborhoods on a weekly basis.
If convicted, all of the defendants could face life in prison.
Happening now, Los Angeles law enforcement officials have indicted 23 members of the notorious MS-13 gang for alleged widespread trafficking of meth.
Eyewitness News reporter Carlos Grande is live in downtown Los Angeles with more on this story. Carlos.
Well, this was certainly a very big law enforcement operation. Officials seized drugs, cash, and guns. Also, 15 people actually arrested as federal agents are targeting top MS-13 gang members. Now, look at this video here. This is just some of the meth that was found this morning, and they also just showed us some of the weapons that they were able to get. As you said, altogether, 23 defendants were charged by a federal grand jury in what is described as a widespread conspiracy to traffic drugs. Officials say that during a 2-year period, an MS-13 leader who was in prison actually directed gangs to distribute drugs in local neighborhoods. And officials claim by doing this, the gang was able to make money on the street to finance their operations. They say MS-13 members used violence and intimidation to control the sale of narcotics in the neighborhoods that they occupy. They say with this, they're trying to take out the leadership of the gang to combat violence on the streets.
What this investigation has revealed is that MS-13 uses drug trafficking as its lifeblood. It uses drug funds to finance its operations, including murder and assaults. In selling these drugs, MS-13 poisons others and disenfranchises communities. In selling these drugs, MS-13 funds its modus operandi of murder and mayhem. And in selling these drugs, MS-13 perpetuates a cycle of violence and destruction.
Now, most are in custody. 2 of the suspects are considered fugitives. And because of the seriousness of some of these violent crimes, all of the suspects could face life in prison.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys for checking out the channel. Really quick, guys, I've been trying to get my TikTok channel going. I put up my last 4 videos over on the channel. So just TikTok, Greenlit Gang TV. Would love to get some views going over there. I'm still trying to figure that out, editing, shortening up clips and everything. Right now, I'm just kind of reposting the videos. But if you could just support, go over, maybe give it a like, share it. It'd mean a lot. Anyway, we're going to be talking about, man, a really interesting story. And kind of like the last video with Michael Torres, I was, when you Google some of this stuff, you see certain stories that pop up, certain pictures that pop up. And that's the picture that I used, for my main title, is the picture of Mula with the MS to the right and Laime, the black hand, to his left. And his story is really interesting because it shows the bridge. He bridged the gap in some ways between MS-13 and LAME. Now, he was originally, like I said in the intro, an MS-13 member. He's born in 1971. El Salvador, I mean, they're in the middle of a civil war then. You guys can go look in the news, go look at YouTube. They're building those mega prisons, those cells where they're putting hundreds of people in these huge cells. The leader of that country, just recently, they swept the streets, literally took military, police, anybody, and they rounded up. They are not playing because of the extreme amount of gang violence that is going on. In the forefront of that, you got the 18th Streeters and stuff, but it is and has always been MS-13. That gang, I mean, since I was a kid, I'm 33 going on 34, and since I was a kid, I've been hearing about MS-13. As I got older, the Mexican Mafia, and this guy, Mula, he's good on both sides. He's got tattoos, like the picture I put up, he's got tattoos of MS-13, he's got tattoos of the Mexican Mafia. It's like, just to think about that, the type of individual it takes to be able to do that. This guy had power in Mexico, South America, North America, the United States. I mean, he was the real deal. We're going to be reading from a couple different articles to be talking about, him and his story. And we're just going to kind of jump right into it here, guys. We're going to be bouncing back and forth. But one afternoon in 1993, Nelson Alexander Flores Pacheco, better known as Mula with an MS-13, took his knife, stabbed a taxi driver, and kicked his face repeatedly. Just 22 years old and utterly reckless, he had assaulted the driver while intoxicated. After being arrested by Nevada police, he identified himself as a soldier with the Model Salvatrucha MS-13. At that time, nobody had heard of that gang. So you got a picture, you got a 22-year-old Mula, just stabbed a guy in the neck, kicked him in the face, shouting out his gang. You know, if you fast forward to 2003 or 2013, they're going to be like, oh my God, the hair is going to stand up on the back of their neck. But in 1993, they're like, what? Neither jail nor time cured Flores of his violent ways. 2 years later, he was arrested in Nevada for participating in a drive-by shooting targeting rival gang members. He spent 5 years in prison and was deported back to El Salvador upon release. I'm going to pause really quick right there because the fact that he stabbed the taxi driver in the neck, kicked his face repeatedly, doesn't go into depth what happened, but not much happened because it's only 2 years later he gets arrested again, does a drive-by shooting, and now they go, okay, 5 years, which you can get 5 years for nothing, and he gets deported back to El Salvador upon release. And to him, he's just going home. So it's a homecoming of sorts for Flores. He was born into El Salvador's western department of Santa Ana on June 26, 1971, a few years before the country's civil war, which took place between, this is crazy amount of time, 1979 and 1992. That was longer than our civil war lasted. I believe our civil war lasted, I don't want to be wrong on this, but a lot less time. I'm not even going to throw the years. I believe it began in 1865. And I believe it ended in 1870-something. If you know those exact years, comment down below. The conflict marked Flores for life. Two of his sisters, now get this, and you want to know why people become what they are and how they become so violent and reckless and don't care, and the kind of individual it takes to get in with the ranks of MS-13, but also LAME. So the conflict takes place a couple years after he's born. Two of his sisters get killed during a guerrilla attack on a bus, while his mother was killed after being caught in the crossfire, he would later tell an Ohio court. During his childhood, he helped his father in the fields after attending school until the war forced him to flee to Reno, Nevada in 1987. In Reno, he lived with his brother and began forging a reputation for violence before joining the Parkview Locos clique of MS-13 in the Los Angeles area in the early 90s. After serving his sentence in Nevada, so after he does those 5 years and being basically sent back, Flores returns to the United States through Tijuana because it's so close to Los Angeles. The Mexican border city had become a destination for many gang members seeking to return to the United States after being deported. But this is crazy. But Flores, he decides to settle in Columbus, Ohio. And this is so important. This is so important to his story. So he goes to the Midwest, the heart of the Americas. Because the thing is, as much as gang violence is looked down upon all over the United States, if he settles in LA and starts this, he might not be able to get it even off the ground. Or if he does, he's just one of many gangs. But because he goes to Columbus, Ohio, he creates a new MS-13 clique, which was the first in the entire state in the early 2000s. Quote, there was no clique. said Checa, a former gang member, or homeboy, as they like to call themselves. Quote, there were only 3 of us, and I actually went to find one of the old-timers. They called him Mula. Checa had gang experience on the streets of El Salvador, and Flores had spent years in Nevada's prison system, so the 2 men had the chops to create their own clique, which they named the Columbus Criminals Locos after their adopted city. The MS-13's expansion into Ohio broadened the gang's presence in the United States and consequently the range of crimes they committed. Part of their profits went to El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Like many gang members, Flores had a double life. He had a day job, often using fake documents to obscure his past, and he kept to himself. He was a polite, respectful, and punctual employee, according to a former contractor interviewed by the Los Angeles Times. Now, I will say this. I don't think a lot of gang members live double lives. Some do. And I will also say this. The smart ones do, okay? And just seeing that he did that, reading that, tells me a lot about what I need to know and why a guy like him rose to power. Because if you're smart enough to be able to, and slick enough, and you're able to manipulate and see what people... He's not dumb. He knows where he's at. He looks around. He's in Columbus, Ohio. It's probably predominantly white, okay? And he knows in order to get this gang off the ground and to do things the right way and not be thrown in prison right away and not be marked, he's got to shape up. He's got to get a job. He's got to, yes, sir, no, sir, be polite. Like they said, he's on time to work. He's working. Contractor means he's working a construction job. And that tells me a lot that he has the discipline to do that. Because without discipline, you're just another guy. You're just another gang member who's going to mess up, act out on emotion. Not that he didn't act out on emotion, but the guy had brains. Let's just leave it at that. The guy definitely had smarts, not just street smarts, but smarts overall. However, Flores' facade fell apart on December 23rd, 2004, 2 days before Christmas, when the Columbus police arrested him for a minor traffic accident. This is the part about when you're coming over illegally, when you're using fake names and fake documents. One slip up, one speeding ticket, you could be done. During the investigation, officers discovered his true identity, and he was handed over to immigration authorities who charged him with illegal reentry. This is what's nuts to me. So for just illegal reentry, he gets pulled over for having a taillight out. Illegal reentry, he gets 71 months in prison and sent to Inglewood Prison in Colorado before being transferred to Big Sandy in Kentucky. So I'm just like, that just seems so ass backwards. He stabs a guy in the neck, kicks him in the face when he's 22. Doesn't even do a couple years because there's a couple years later, he's out committing more crime, gets deported, but gets picked up for illegal reentry. And yes, I know he's got a criminal record, but he gets over 5 years. He gets basically 71 months is a 1 month shy of 6 years. So goes to Inglewood Prison in Colorado, gets transferred to Big Sandy in Kentucky. Mula was behind bars again, but his criminal career was about to take off. At Big Sandy, Flores met Jose Landa Rodriguez alias Fox. I did a video about him. Please check him out. A respected gangbanger who'd become a member of the Mexican Mafia, or MA, in jail. Known as carnales or soul brothers, there are but a handful of La MA. Inside some federal and state prisons, they wield tremendous influence over other gang members. And that goes without saying. I put a lot of these pictures up. These were cool pictures to get. The MA got its start in California, where inside the state prison system, they created a confederation of Latino gangs. This was to ensure these gangs did not attack each other inside the penitentiary system, even if they were enemies on the outside. The Non-Aggression Pact took on a name, Sur or South, and its members became known as Sureños, a reference to their roots in Southern California. It eventually grew to include tens of thousands of members across the United States. And at the top, of course, was the Mexican Mafia, the Black Hand, whose members were often referred to as Los Señores and used the gangs for their own criminal ends. And that's what we've talked about before. The Mexican Mafia, without the criminal street gangs, without the guys that are on the streets, do not have the power that they currently have. They are the nucleus, they are the brains, but the people on the streets, the gangs on the streets, are like the heartbeat. They are what keeps everything going. If the gangs were to one day go, we're done. You guys are all doing triple, quadruple, 10x life plus some. We're done. Even the ones that are going to get out, we're done. We're done. We're done. Yeah, some people are going to get killed, but they got numbers. they would be brought to their knees. But I don't see that ever happening. These guys are smart. These guys do wield enormous power. They'll wipe out your family at the drop of a hat. They'll kill your goldfish. They'll kill your dog. It does not matter. So that's why I think is it would take a large amount of people, gangs coming together, gang sets coming together. And again, we talk about smarts and discipline. That's what it would take. And I just don't ever see, not that they're not smart, I just don't see it happening. The Mexican Mafia is going to continue to grow. And really quick, I'm going to give a shout out to Soft White Underbelly. He just uploaded part 2 of his Rene Hernandez interview. It's fascinating. And you made a really good point. He talks about gangs and talks about the Yakuza, who've been around almost 1,000 years. He talks about the Italian Mafia. You know, these gangs have been around for hundreds of years. Some like the Yakuza, almost 1,000 years. The Mexican Mafia has only been around for 70 years, give or take, right? 70-ish years. And he makes a good point. He goes, it's still in its infancy. It's still in its beginning. Can you imagine the power it'll have if it sticks around for 200 years, 300 years? I mean, it really makes you go, oh, he's right. 70 years to, I mean, you know, like I said, I'm 33. Everything, they go back decades. But the Yakuza goes back 6, 7, 8, 900 years. The Italian, La Cosa Nostra, hundreds of years. It's crazy when you put it into that kind of perspective. That was really, really interesting to me when he said that. Okay, so going back to it here. Rodriguez, for example, had an entourage of Serenos who obeyed him at will outside the prison. In addition, the MA leader who hailed from, and remember, we're talking about Landa Rodriguez, Fox. Rodriguez, for example, had an entourage of Serenos who obeyed him at all costs, at all times, outside the prison. In addition, the MA leader who hailed from the Mexican state of Michoacan had ties to prominent Mexican drug traffickers. As a young man in the early 90s, he was connected with the Montes family, the main drug trafficking contact in California for Mexican criminal groups like the Familia Michoacana and the Knights Templar. These guys are not to be messed with, man. Those guys are brutal. In 2011, the Montes family put Rodriguez in charge of trafficking meth and marijuana from Michoacan to the United States. This created a long-standing partnership between the MA and the Knights Templar. While in prison, Flores and Rodriguez quickly formed a deep bond. So here you got Flores, a well-established El Salvadorian, been back and forth a couple times, MS-13 leader. He gets in very tight with a serious player in the Mexican Mafia with Rodriguez. And this is where bonds are made. And Flores convinced Rodriguez, we talk about brains, right? And these leaders, they're sociopathic in the way of this is what I saw also in the Rene Hernandez interview, they're people pleasers. They know they're able to identify what you want. They offer you basically to get you what you want. They're going to say and do the things that they have to do in order to get you what you want, but also in the end, what they want, which for Flores means power, control, money, and getting in and maybe become a Mexican Mafia member, which he basically becomes bulletproof at that point. Flores convinced Rodriguez that the MS-13 didn't sell out its people or surrender. It wasn't long before Flores won over Fox, and he soon became a spokesperson for the MA. He'd make calls to members in other prisons and speak with contacts on the outside in the conversations that involved more than just drug deals. Flores' notoriety had been growing among MS-13 members in Columbus due to his bravery and leadership. Remember, we talked about you got to be able to lead. You got to be able to have smarts and discipline. But he hadn't quite caught the gang's attention across the United States. His arrest was a turning point. Once inside the prison system, he gained relevance, power, and fame. Eventually, his name started to resonate in Big Sandy and across the country. That means it started to ring bells, that everybody knew the name, and it is what it is. His fellow MS-13 members knew he was also working as a soldier for the MA and that his contacts with other criminal networks were becoming more frequent. His bond with Fox, Rodriguez, was such that he even became a prospective carnale. So now he's, that's just, I give the guy credit. Now you are, now you're going to become a full-fledged Mexican Mafia member if all things go right. Before Flores was released, Landa Rodriguez saw how their relationship could help the MA on the streets. So remember, you got two leaders, Fox, Flores. These guys are, they're friends, but they're both kind of playing off of each other. You get what you want, I'm going to get what I want. We got power, prestige, respect. We got people underneath us. Let's take this thing to the next level. So he saw Rodriguez says, well, this could work for all of us, help the MA on the streets. So he entrusted Flores to manage the MA's drug trafficking operations in the U.S. At some point, the two decide Flores should go to Tijuana. They'd meet again in Mexico as soon as Rodriguez was released. They agreed. Mula in Tijuana. After completing his sentence at Big Sandy in January of 2011, Flores was deported to El Salvador. Then he knew that was coming. According to a confidential intelligence document from El Salvador's National Civil Police, or Policía Nacional Civil, this document was obtained by D-Do Secrets, an organization that received leaked documents from a hacking group called Guacamaya. With Rodriguez's support and his future set in Tijuana, Flores didn't stay in El Salvador for long. He left soon after arriving with the help of an MA secretary in Southern California, who assisted him during the almost 3-week trip north. So he's going from South America to North America. And again, that just give you an idea, okay? Or Central America. He's going to Mexico, right? So he's got South America unlocked. He's got Mexico, Central America on lock. And then he's got the United States on lock. And it's just, that's what's so crazy about this story is you talk about power. He doesn't just have it in the prison system or on the streets of California. This guy's got power in the Midwest, on the West Coast, in Mexico, South America, Honduras. They said they were sending money to from Columbus, Ohio. They said they were sending money to Honduras, Guatemala. That's power. That is, to me, that's a different level of power. With Rodriguez's support and his future set in Tijuana, Flores didn't stay there long. So, gets the help with the MA secretary, 3-week trip up north. Tijuana was a perfect base for Flores because the border city is home to drug traffickers, smugglers, fugitives, human traffickers, and many others engaged in criminal activity. That is a scary place. Some call it the city of sin, which I believe. You talk about Vegas being Sin City? No, it has nothing on Tijuana. That is literally a place you will disappear. If my white ass goes down there, there's a chance I don't come back. So it was easy. And I like senoritas. I like Hispanic women. So, just playing. So it was easy for Flores to blend in. What's more, it was a regular respite for his gang. MS-13 members have passed through Tijuana since the gang first formed in LA in the mid-'80s. Back then, Central American gang members could even pose as Hispanics. So U.S. immigration authorities would deport them to Tijuana by mistake. And I know I just messed up by saying this because I kind of compared Mexico to Central America. That's wrong. I'm sorry. I'm got a little mixed up there. But anyway, I just want to make that quick revision. Authorities, so check this out. What's more, so the MS-13 members they're having to go through Tijuana to get from LA to Tijuana, yada, yada. And back then, Central American gang members would even pose as Mexicans. So the U.S. immigration authorities would mess them up and they would accidentally deport them to Tijuana, which is where they wanted to go. They're not all from MS-13, but from many gangs, said Angel Salvador, alias Zancudo, one of the first Mexicans to be accepted into the MS-13. So I'll say that again. He said, they're not all from MS-13, but from any gang, said Angel Salvador, alias Zancudo. Tijuana became a neutral spot where various gang members could coexist. In a way, it felt like an extension of the MA's SUR philosophy that had spread through California's prison system. The border city also served the MA's drug trafficking interests. A portion of drug shipments traveling through Mexico crosses the border into Tijuana to reach U.S. consumers. But for that to happen, traffickers need intermediaries that can maneuver the legal and illegal border crossings. So you need people you can trust, people that are smart, and people that can get things done. The MA was effective in that role, but unlike in the United States, it didn't control any territory. Its members transferred drugs across the border or worked as hired gunmen, and these are for the cartels. In other words, they were servants to Mexico's well-established drug trafficking network. So, and we've talked about this in a couple of videos ago, that cartel members don't very much, some they do, some they do. I'm sure Rodriguez Fox was revered and well respected and loved by cartels, and oh my God, Mula, same thing. But a lot of it says, and I watched an interview with this, and it might have been the Rene Hernandez. Yeah, he said that in like federal prisons, when cartel members go to federal prison, who are they in there with? They're in there with Mexican Mafia members and Nuestra Familia members, but they look down on them. They look at them like, you're whitewashed. You're from America. You're not us. We have real power. We control governments. We control the states, the cities, the people. That is real power. Despite its long-standing presence, the MS-13 was never able to establish a foothold in Tijuana. With a mix of members primarily composed of deportees from different U.S.-based cliques, MS-13 members in Tijuana simply worked to survive or pass through the city. As such, MS-13 members in Tijuana can be divided into two categories: the quiet ones, looking for nothing more than a place to settle down after years of imprisonment, or the active ones, moving drugs across the border or offering their services as hitmen, among other crimes. And Flores, what do you guys think he chose? What do you think Mula became? You think he just wanted to settle down? Hell no, man. He became a hitman. Upon arriving, Robert Ruiz, also known as Peanut Butter and a longtime MA member, welcomed Flores with open arms. Ruiz, who was close with Flores' Big Sandy mentor, Fox Rodriguez, also connected Flores with the best-paying drug traffickers in Mexico. At first, this meant the Knights Templar, a powerful group that had emerged from the remnants of the Familia Michoacana. Later, that would expand. In addition, Flores' relationship with Rodriguez continued. The two kept in touch by phone, even after Rodriguez was transferred from Big Sandy to the county jail in L.A. And I did a video on Fox when he went to these county jails. The dude ran everything. He ran all the drug trade. He was the man. The conversations, many of which were intercepted by the U.S. Department of Justice, were full of coded messages about drugs, politics, and loyalty to the Brotherhood. Flores and Rodriguez also discussed plans to work with the Knights Templar in L.A. Over time, Flores' ambition grew. He began to work with whoever paid the best, according to Yaco, a gang member who knew Flores well, but asked for his identity to be withheld for security reasons. It makes sense, Yaco. Flores went on to become a hitman for the Knights Templar, according to U.S. federal prison official who spoke to Incite Crime on condition of anonymity. He also trafficked meth to various U.S. cities and even dealt with the Sinaloa cartel, according to Yaco. With time, Flores' revenues grew and he invested in a chain of small convenience stores called Tecate 6. Throughout, he maintained contact with the MS-13. He gave gang members jobs at his stores or provided a place to stay. Like he had in Ohio, Flores led a double life. While he used his MA connections to expand his criminal activity, he became widely respected within the MS-13 as somebody who looked out for his homeboys. Flores also kept his original MS-13 clique close. For instance, he made sure to send money to the Parkview Locos leaders back in LA. And when he needed a right-hand man, he could count on Tijuana. He turned to another homie, Jose Alberto Alvarado Molina, alias Goras. Molina, who would later be investigated by Interpol for drug trafficking and murder, was famous for his rap songs about MS-13 and had been one of the first to work for Flores at one of his Tecate 6 locations. Remember, those are the convenience stores he opened up when he was he's smart. He's going to keep the things going. He's going to keep the facade up. He's going to say and tell people he's legit. He's going to keep to himself. Meanwhile, he's probably one of the most powerful gang members in the entire country. Still, Flores had his own contradictions. Despite his own criminal activities, for example, Flores told the other homeboys who came to him for support that the gang was not allowed to sell drugs or carry out robberies in Tijuana because the city was not the territory of the MS nor the Serranos, which, in my idea, my brain, that's smart. You're in Mexico. That is not your territory, like we just read a few minutes ago. I mean, it's kind of a harsh word, but they're basically servants of these drug cartels. So you have no right to be going around selling. You're basically selling drugs in, I don't want to say rival, because I'm not saying they didn't like each other, but you're selling drugs that aren't your territory. You're robbing and you're hurting the locals, which again, that's not your territory. Not only is that not your territory, that's not your home country. So I think so far what I've read, he's making the smart and right decisions. And again, it's all backing up and solidifying for me why he got to where he got to in his criminal career. He reached the top echelon, the 1% of the 1%. Amidst it all, Flores kept making money and rising in stature. It wasn't long before he owned 2 taxis and 4 Tecate 6 stores. And after the arrest of several important MS-13 members in L.A., Flores looks around and he becomes the de facto leader of the gang in the city. According to Yaco, Flores spent 2 years overseeing gang operations between Tijuana and LA. One example of the small-scale logistics network Flores ran across the U.S. emerged in a federal indictment filed in 2015 in California. Prosecutors accused Flores of connecting methamphetamine dealers to one of his homeboys in a state prison in California. The homeboy used a contraband cell phone arranged for drug-filled stuffed animals to be sent to Oklahoma and Arkansas. Overall, prosecutors said Flores arranged for an estimated 10,000 grams of methamphetamine to be distributed in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and New York. Money was sent to the MS's top leadership in El Salvador, known as the Ranfa Nacional, and used to purchase weapons, according to Salvadorian prosecutors. So, man, again, He's not just doing things out of LA or California. Dude's doing things in Ohio, Arkansas, Oklahoma. This is all Midwest. You're going down south, Texas. Then you're going back up east to New York. He is a transnational. This is a cartel. I mean, he is a transnational mob boss, is what it is. Intrigued, the Ranfla wanted to take things further. Marlon Antonio Menivar Portillo, alias Rojo, a Ranfla, remember, these are the leaders of the El Salvador. These are the top echelon leadership in El Salvador. All right. He was based in Mexico, who was close to Flores, proposed that all his homies in Tijuana should run under the Mexico program. The program was an extension of the Ranfla's leadership, and doing so would mean that every MS-13 member in Mexico was controlled from El Salvador. Flores responded with a resounding no. It was the clearest signal yet of where his allegiances stood. As a soldier of the MA, he could not allow the MS-13 or any gang on the border, for that matter, to establish itself in Tijuana. The SUR philosophy that kept the peace between the gangs had to be maintained, he reasoned. And this is where things get a little sticky, a little, it's a little crunch time. Things get a little more dense, things get tight. But Menivar wouldn't let it go. He contacted Flores again to suggest that any MS-13 members buying and selling drugs in Mexico should operate under a single chain of command directed by the Ranfla in El Salvador. Flores was surprised by his insistence, but decided to meet him halfway. Again, smart. He said he could help the Ranfla find cheaper suppliers, but nothing more. While he had no intention of going against the Salvadorian counterparts, he explained that he was dedicating his time to the MA. The Ranfla fell silent. Nobody followed up on it, said Jaco. Flores' chest, arms, and legs are covered in tattoos, and his loyalties are very clear. He has the number 13 on his chest to show his allegiance to La MA and the SUR philosophy. Tucked inside the number 13, the letters MS represent his gang affiliation. On his upper back, the word Sureño stretches from shoulder to shoulder above a large MS that covers the rest of his back. From his tattoos to his refusal to help the MS-13 expand its drug trafficking in Tijuana, the gang did not appreciate how Flores had prioritized his affiliations. It was as if the MA always superseded the MS-13, which is bound to happen because eventually something like that's going to happen. The leader, the Ranfla guy, is going to, Meneriva, or if I said that wrong, he's going to come in and say, well, hey, man, you're here, you're running things, you got power, you got control, help us out. Let's establish our own ground network. We got soldiers, we got plenty of people, we're violent, we can back things up. And, Mula goes, no, absolutely not. I am a soldier. And he was around those guys more. He's more influenced by those guys. He's very close with Landa Rodriguez, Fox. At some point, it's like they say in the movies, you got to pick a side. You got to pick a side. In spite of his generosity towards fellow MS-13 members, the idea that he was more committed to the MA, and this is what they talk about, you can never please anybody. It's in real life too, real workplace, non-criminal life. You can't please everybody, especially as a boss. You can treat these guys amazing, take care of them, protect them, give them money, power, but guess what? If they feel like you are not choosing them, it takes one time, and this is what happened. More committed to the MA than his original gang, enraged some homeboys who accused him of prioritizing his personal business over the gang, or what they referred to as the barrio. Quote, when you become too involved with the MA and the drug trade, your barrio is relegated to the back burner, and you lose sight of the original purpose, said a deported gang member from LA who is now living in Mexico. Other homeboys who also saw Flores' businesses as acting against the interest of the MS-13. Juan Ramon Sendejas Aguirre, alias Moro, was one of them. Sendejas had been in Tijuana for a couple of years after being deported from LA for distribution of cocaine among other crimes. He claimed to make a living by stealing drugs from small-time drug dealers, but in reality, he often robbed small stores and residents. Flores had a cordial relationship with Sendejas when he arrived in Tijuana, but over time their friendship fell apart. Sendejas started bad-mouthing Flores to homeboys who worked with him, perhaps because he felt Flores had betrayed the MS-13, or maybe just out of spite, which is another thing. People are jealous. People see you making money. People see the control, the power. You're in with the MA, you're in with MS-13, you're calling shots, you're the big dog, and people think they can do it better. People think, well, he's not even that loyal. I can take a side. I can do it better than him. Look, he's halfway in, halfway out anyway. Let me run it. Specifically, he claimed the MS-13 members Flores helped were only given the most demeaning tasks while working at his Tecate 6 stores. Tension reached a breaking point in 2015 when 3 hooded men wearing ski masks and brandishing guns entered a Tecate 6 where Flores' wife was working. They gagged her, tied her up, and took about 60,000 pesos, which is around $3,000 in cash, according to Yaco. So now the gloves are off. Now all bets are off, and it's going to get dangerous. Later analyzing the clothing and build of the assailants. He's smart, man. Flores was able to identify one of the assailants as Hensi, a Salvadorian gang member who had been deported from Cali. Flores was incensed. He knew Hensi was very close to Cendejas. What's more, assaulting his wife was a grave offense that demanded immediate retribution. During a subsequent meeting between gang members, Molina, Flores' right-hand man, demanded Hensi be handed over within a week. Cendejas reportedly agreed, but days, weeks, and months went by and Hensi never appeared. Flores and his allies began looking for him. They spent several nights driving around Hensi's neighborhood, but when Hensi was nowhere to be found, things then cooled down until one day, Cendejas called Flores and told him he was going for tacos with Hensi and his wife. On the phone, he promised to call later with the exact location. The account gets fuzzy at this stage, but according to Yaco, Flores got in contact with the hitman for the JCNG, or better known as the Jalisco Cartel, the New Generation. Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion. He was taking no chances. Those guys are also some bad brothers, man. When Cendejas, Hensi, and his wife arrived at the restaurant, they got out of the car and walked in. At some point, according to Yaco, Cendejas went to the bathroom and called Flores. Hensi overheard the call, and without a word, Hensi went to his car, opened the trunk, took out some gasoline containers. When Cendejas went to see what he was doing, he told him he needed to get gas and then hopped into a taxi with his wife. But instead of going to the gas station, Hensi went to a friend's. There, he left his wife, and this is crazy, man. So this is how fast you have to act if you want to live. Drops the wife off, grabs a mini Uzi. By the time he returned to the restaurant, the CJNG hitman and Cendejas were back in the restaurant. Shots were fired, and Cendejas collapsed, bleeding profusely. Quote, "They got Marto," shouted the hitman, referring to Cendejas. Cendejas had 13 bullet wounds, but survived. Following the shooting, Hensi requested a meeting with Flores. There he came clean about participating in the Tecate 6 robbery. So basically, he has to go to him and say, hey, yeah, I did this. Please don't kill me, right? He said he only did this because Cendejas, who had also been part of the mass assailants who attacked Flores' wife, convinced him to participate. Flores was stunned, and to placate Flores, Hensi vowed he'd kill Cendejas. This is like a movie, but he never got the chance. Drug traffickers killed Hensi in Tijuana in September of 2016 for reasons that are still unclear. So Flores, from Mula, didn't kill him. He came to Mula, admitted the truth, said why he did it. Mula didn't kill him. 7 years after the taco stand incident in December 2022, Cendejas was also shot and killed in his apartment in Tijuana. Fellow gang members emptied an entire clip into his head. Flores' criminal career in Tijuana was thriving until the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation heard his name on a wiretap. At the time, the agency was investigating a series of homicides committed between 13 and 15 by the Parkview Locos in L.A. The FBI monitored him for months, during which officials discovered he was involved in drug trafficking and at least one failed attempt to traffic weapons to El Salvador. The case led to a U.S. indictment, and on March 5th, 2018, Flores was arrested in Tijuana in one of the Tecate 6 stores, the so-called high-level security groups, Grupos de Alto Nivel de Seguridad, man, I butchered that, formed by the government of El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico, aided in his capture. He was accused of conspiracy in the Southern District of Ohio. Because remember, that's where he started MS, one of the first MS cells he started in Columbus, Ohio, all those years ago. So this is a guy, I mean, he did some time. He did a couple years here, a couple years there. He does 5 years when he gets a 71 months for the illegal reentry. But other than that, he had a hell of a run. U.S. authorities eagerly awaited Flores' extradition, but it never came. According to Salvadoran intelligence reports, Flores was detained in Mexico for only 11 days before being sent to El Salvador in March of 2018, despite not facing any pending criminal charges there. His swift deportation raised flags. Some of his fellow gang members believed he had bribed Mexican authorities. Yaco, for example, said Flores knew of the U.S. extradition request and paid to expedite his repatriation. God, I said that wrong. 2 months later, the U.S. government requested that Interpol issue a red notice for his arrest, but Flores was about to go on the move again. In November of 2018, just 6 months after being deported, Deported, Flores returned once again to Tijuana, eager to resume his criminal activity. So he goes, he lays low. He's like, I'm going straight back because he knows that's where the money, the power, everything. And he's in the middle of everything. He's got the United States above him, South America below him. You got Central America. He's running multiple, like they said, he's controlling all of the Americas. He truly was the bridge between MS and La MA. Eager to resume his criminal activity, he continued to lead this double life, working with the MA to send kilos of meth to the United States while also sheltering MS-13 homeboys from authorities. FBI investigators revealed that he used the alias 40 or Tijuana to evade authorities. But during his second stay in Tijuana, Flores' rancor against the Mexico program boiled over. He was convinced, remember that name, Menjivar, the guy who was in the program, who's one of the top leaders in the El Salvadorian, I'm saying that wrong, but El Salvadorians, the Model Salvadorians, the MS-13's highest-ranking guys, Menjivar wanted him to hook him up, let his guys come in, take over, run drugs, do all that, commit robberies, commit crime, and Mula goes, no, we can't do that. I'm in Tijuana. I'm working with the MA. I'm one of their guys. He's close with Fox. He's like, we're not in our territory. We can't just do that. Excuse me. Leader of the program, Hugo Armando Quinteros Mineros, alias Flaco. All right. So he's convinced that Menjivar and the leader of the program, Hugo Armando Quinteros Mineros, alias Flaco, had handed him over to Mexican authorities. So that's what's going through Mula's brain. The officers who captured him had told him as much, according to classified reports from El Salvador's Attorney General office. That insight crime obtained. Flores shared this news with one of the gang's most influential, Ranfleros, jailed in California, who coordinated a revenge attack from his cell with Hector Antonio Alfaro Flores, alias Crimen. Alfaro was in El Salvador, and prosecutors there had wiretapped his conversations as part of their own investigation. Through intercepted phone calls, they discovered a plan in mid-2019 to bring homies from Cali and New York to Tijuana to assassinate certain Mexico program members, according to the document. The attack was eventually thwarted because the gang members coming from New York were arrested on drug charges. And Flores, he only lasted 2 years in Tijuana before authorities finally caught up to him. On May 20th, 2020, he gets arrested at one of his Tecate 6 shops. This time, he was swiftly handed over to the FBI. So a few years before that, when he got handed over, he gets quick extradite, raised red flags, gets sent to El Salvador, knowing damn well he's coming straight back to Tijuana. And it is what it is. The arrest hit us hard. An old MS-13 gang member told Insight Crime, Mula was our advisor, the one who always had a solution, the one who found a way to support us no matter what. Without his help, Flores' associates couldn't visit the stores where they worked and did not know what to do. Excuse me. After arriving in the U.S., Flores was sent to Ohio. There he pled guilty and was quietly sentenced to 5 years in June of 21. According to court records, he is scheduled to be released on September 30th, 24. However, that may not happen. July 21, just days after his sentencing in Ohio, the Southern District of California indicted him for meth trafficking. That's the end of this article. But to give you guys kind of a bow on this, he got sentenced to another 17 years on that case. Fascinating story. He seems like not a crazed, violent maniac. I'll be honest, a lot of these MS cases I cover are just insane amounts of brutality and violence. Yes, when he was 22 in a drunken state, he stabs that taxi cab driver, but just reading that guy's quote of he's the one who had a solution, he provided for us, he took care of us, he's the man, he's Jefe, he's the boss of bosses. He's taking care of everything. And you got to think of what it takes to run a true transnational organization. He's running drugs from Tijuana to the Americas, controlling Mexican Mafia people in the States and in Mexico. He's thwarting off these Ranfleros guys, these MS-13 leaders from trying to come in, take over power in Mexico, but also trying to stay in good standing with them. He's taking care of the guys underneath him. He's sending money to Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. He's also trying not to get arrested, trying to be smart. He's getting deported. He's coming back. That is a full-time job times 10. And I will say this much. Again, I've covered 2 stories back-to-back. Mosca Torres was another one that, man, that guy had a lot of power and influence. But I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This story right here, I feel like is another level of power and smarts. And I have respect for him. I do. I will say that out loud. I have respect for him and the way he did things. It is what it is. It's not glamorous, but it is what it is, and that's what we cover on this channel. Without you guys, I am nothing. I hope you guys have a wonderful month. Take care of yourselves. Get the help you need. Go to AA. Go to treatment. Go to T-Talks. Get on the MAP program. Get on whatever you need to do to get yourself healthy, to get yourself better. Love your kids. Love your family. Love God. Love the people around you. The things that matter in life are the little things. And the older we get, the more we realize that. Ladies, I love you guys. I appreciate all the support I get from you guys. You're worth it. Take care of your kids. Love the people that are around you. Dump that loser. Dump the drug addicts. They're not worth it. I was that guy. I was a manipulator. I was a liar. I wasn't worth nothing. You guys, males and females, guys, girls, we got to love ourselves before we can love anybody else. We are all worth it. Get the help you need. Reach out. Comment down below. I love talking to you guys. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.